Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you so much for joining today. My name is Eliza Al-Laham, and I am the Consul General of the U.S. Consulate here in Guadalajara. And I am thrilled to welcome you to today's discussion entitled Periodismo a Través de una Cámara, presented by renowned photojournalist Ozier Mohammed. And Mr. Mohammed, it is a pleasure and an honor to have you today.
Thank you.
This presentation is part of the Consulate's ongoing celebration of Black History Month, and we're truly excited to dive into Mr. Mohammed's career and experiences, capturing and exposing pivotal moments in history. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our Public Affairs Officer, Brittany Thompson, who will introduce Mr. Mohammed and kick off the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Consul General Al-Laham, for welcoming our audiences to this discussion. My name is Brittany Thompson, and I'm the Public Affairs Officer at the Consulate in Guadalajara. Thank you so much for joining us. We are very, very happy to see such a large audience of students, journalists, educators, and many others from our community. We look forward to an engaging discussion, but please note that this event is off the record. It is my honor to introduce our featured speaker, Mr. Ozier Mohammed. Mr. Mohammed has been a photojournalist since 1972 and has covered Africa extensively since 1974. In 1985, he shared the Pulitzer Prize in International Reporting with two other reporters for a series of reports titled Africa, the Desperate Continent. He covered South Africa's first non-racial election, in which Nelson Mandela became president, as well as Mandela's later years in Pretoria and Johannesburg in 2013. He has worked for national and international news outlets such as Ebony, Newsday, The New York Times, and many others. In addition to his extensive international career, he has covered pivotal moments in U.S. history, such as the Hurricane Katrina evacuation in New Orleans, the election of the first Black president of the United States, Barack Obama, in 2008, and protests in Chicago and New York against racial injustices and inequality. Mr. Mohammed, it is truly a pleasure and an honor to be speaking with you today, and we really appreciate you sharing your time. So to begin our discussion, I would love to know how you developed your photojournalistic eye and your interest in the subjects you covered. What drew you to Africa?
What drew me to Africa? First of all, I want to thank you for the Consul General for that introduction, and thank you so much. And also thank you, Brittany, for inviting me to join you today and during this month of American history, Black history. So the question is, what drew me to Africa? I grew up in Chicago. And Chicago was, I think, kind of a lot like where I live now, like New York. And that is a way station for people trying to improve their lives. You know, during the Great Migration, a lot of African Americans, people of African descent, African Americans to be more specific, made the Great Migration, and I'm not sure if your audience are familiar with it, but at any rate, my family, like so many African Americans, left the South to move into the industrial North. And because we were a community that, you know, had to deal with a lot of problems as far as housing and good schools and things of that sort, there was kind of a situation in which we were trying to learn as much about each other in order to strengthen and fortify our communities. And then that sort of extended outward. I was brought up in the Nation of Islam, and Chicago not only had the Nation of Islam, but also Chicago had a very strong Protestant community of African Americans, a lot of churches, and there was also a lot of political activity and also cultural activity. And with the addition of a struggling working class and also kind of a growing middle class, there were certain things that were necessary in order to keep the community informed and sort of viable. And so we had publications and we had manufacturing. For instance, we had the Chicago Defender. The Chicago Defender was a newspaper, and I can say it in the past tense, that encouraged African Americans to leave the South. And the Chicago Defender came, oh gosh, I guess it was published before World War I. And the Chicago Defender was started by an African American man named Robert Abbott. I used to read the paper as a teenager in the 60s. And then I just got very interested in other publications that dealt with the lives of African Americans. It was also the home to Johnson Publication, the first company that I worked for as a staff photographer. Published Ebony magazine and Jet magazine. And because of working there, I had a lot of opportunities to travel around the United States to cover events that were important to African Americans. At least that was the motivation. And also I had opportunities to travel to Africa at least on 2 or 3 occasions, and even the Caribbean. So at any rate, what I'll do is as I show some of the slides in which illustrate some of the big stories that I worked on during my career, I'm sure things will come to mind which could further explain why I had a keen interest in Africa. The first set of slides, let me call it will be from that series that was referenced early called Africa, the Desperate Continent. This assignment was for Newsday, a Long Island newspaper. And I worked with 2 of my colleagues, Josh Friedman and Dennis Bell. We started out in West Africa covering countries below the Sahel. And the Sahel region is everything below the North Africa. So below Mali, below Algeria, below the Arab north of Africa. So we went into West Africa initially to cover the drought. Africa was experiencing a terrible drought at the time. And we started again in Mali, and then we went on to Ethiopia. Oops, I'm not sure why that happened. Let me see if I can call that back up. My apologies for that. I'm not sure why that happened. But, let me try that again and see if I can move that image without losing the screen. And that's bizarre. Okay.
Mr. Muhammad, just to let you know, we can't see it yet, so I'm not sure if you've started sharing.
Oh, you know what? I'm sure thank you, Brittany. That's exactly
no problem.
What happened. Okay, here we go. My apologies, everyone.
You can see it now.
Okay, terrific. Okay, there we go. And hopefully the image won't drop this time. Okay, so let me just scroll over to the next image and see if it'll hold. That's bizarre. That is bizarre. Let me try something else. My apologies, everyone who's holding on the other end. Wait for the space. So, let me see if I can just let it roll, and hopefully it won't drop again. Bizarre. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, I think I figured it out. Okay, here we go. My mistake. One more shot at that. You know, it's Murphy's Law. Yes, it's slideshow. Okay. Wait for space bar. There we go. Okay, so we started out in West Africa, and once we had permission to enter Ethiopia, the three of us, Josh Friedman and Dennis Bell, we traveled into Ethiopia, stopping along the way into Niger and Burkina Faso to also report on how the drought was affecting the western region of the continent. So once we had felt we sufficiently covered the impact of drought in West Africa, in those three countries, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, we went into Ethiopia after the Ethiopian government allowed us to acquire visas. And at the time, the Ethiopian government was celebrating the 10th anniversary of its revolution, where it had deposed Haile Selassie, who was the ruler before the communist government took over under the leadership of a man named Haile Miriam Mengistu. And the reason why the story in Ethiopia turned out to be such a big story, because the impact of the drought was much greater there. And also, the Mengistu government was fighting wars on three fronts, in Eritrea and in Tigray, and also in the Ogaden, in the eastern part of Ethiopia. We traveled to all those regions and did as much reporting as we possibly could do. And once we had done that, we started to file stories. And at that time, this is before the internet, so the film had to be shipped via courier service back to New York. And the way I got the film back was through DHL, which was sort of the FedEx, the international, similar to FedEx, Federal Express, but it's an international courier, DHL. And my film was shipped to our London bureau, and shipped from our London bureau into JFK, and somebody from the newspaper I worked for at the time, Newsday, moved the film into the office, and I don't know if I hit the wrong button or what, and processed it. And once that film was processed, the paper filed the story right away, and we were the first print journal. Perhaps I think we even beat broadcast media in making the world aware of what was going on in Ethiopia, while the government of Ethiopia under Mengistu was spending most of its resources in celebrating the 10th year of its communist rule. So let me see if I can get the slideshow back up. That's good. Okay. My apologies. This is really kind of I'm puzzled by this. Totally puzzled, because I've done this before. Never had this problem. I may have to go out and come back in. Can you hear me on your end?
We can.
Okay.
I was just about to say, if you'd like, in the meantime, I can encourage people to ask questions.
Yeah, but I think maybe I should go out and come back in because I think my computer is frozen for some reason.
No problem, no problem.
Yeah, my apologies because I don't know why nothing seems to be responding to the cursor. Even though Zoom, didn't see it Zoom well.
No worries, these things happen. But in the meantime, to our audience, if you have any questions for Mr. Muhammad, please feel free to write them in the chat, and we will have time at the end of the session to ask him. We'll ask you to come off mute at that point and ask your question. You can also, if you don't already know that we have this available in Spanish, there is a way to switch your audio so that you only hear the Spanish. In order to do that, you would just click on the little globe icon that's at the bottom right-hand side of the screen, and you can switch it to Spanish or to English if you prefer.
Okay. Let's see if I can call that back up again. So yeah, it looks like the right folder. Can you see the folder?
Yes, so we can see the photos here. If the slideshow doesn't work, we could also look at it this way.
Yeah, sure, okay. Well, let me see if I can get the slideshow up again. I don't know why it crashed. That's strange. Yeah, so we spent about 2 months in Africa covering the drought and the consequences that the political situation, how it exacerbated the starvation or the famine. As I mentioned before, we traveled to the north to Eritrea. We traveled into the Ogaden, which is a huge stretch eastward that will take you into, if you cross the Ogaden going east, you'll end up in a place called Djibouti, and then you can cross the Red Sea and go into Somalia, and then onward into the Arab Peninsula. But at any rate, these are some of the dislocation camps in Ethiopia. Some of the scenes from the dislocation camp, where many of the dislocated were receiving help and resources from agencies like World Vision and Doctors Without Borders. It was a pretty heartbreaking situation to see so many people suffering, especially the children. And being African American and just seeing this kind of suffering, just makes you wonder, how come there are so many situations in which Africans in the diaspora are dealing with situations in which, life is just so tenuous. Something that has concerned me through my whole life. Now we're moving into Nigeria, and this was in 1999. The previous photographs were captured made in 1984. That's when I went into Africa with Josh and Dennis in 1984. This is 1999 in Nigeria, when Nigeria had its first democratic election. I know it's kind of odd to think that for those of you who've studied colonial history, studied African history, the first ruler of Nigeria was a fellow named Nnamdi Azikiwe, who actually went to college here in the States, which isn't really that unusual. He went to Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, which is considered, Harvard is considered the Lincoln University of Massachusetts. But at any rate, it's usually just the opposite. People say, you know, Lincoln University is the Harvard of HBCUs, or historically Black colleges. But at any rate, Azikiwe went to Lincoln. He was the first ruler of Nigeria after the British pulled out in 1960. Actually, my father-in-law went to Lincoln at the same time Azikiwe had attended Lincoln University. And during the coronation, the inauguration, whatever you want to call it, since he was more or less selected. I guess he was one of the freedom fighters or one of the forces driving the British out, that he was invited with many other Lincoln alumni to the coronation of Azikiwe as the first ruler of Nigeria in the post-colonial period. But the first democratic election was in 1999. And these are some photographs from that coverage, in which I was involved with one reporter, a fellow named Onishi. So at any rate, these are some of the photographs from around mostly Lagos. I think we did go up to Abuja in the north, which is the capital of Nigeria. But this was in the south in Lagos. Yeah. And you can see, folks, I think the election was over 2 or 3 days, like a 2 or 3 day period for Nigerians to choose their first democratically elected president. We also went into some of the neighborhoods around Nigeria, as in most countries, you know, even here in the States, you have different levels of economic distress or well-being. This is just one of those areas where there's economic distress, and it's part of Lagos. Here's a polling station in Lagos, and these guys, these clever young men, actually 6. There's one you can't see, the 6th one you can't see that well, only his shoulder. They were canvassing for a fellow named Olufalaye in Lagos. And this was more in the embassy area. Of course, it would be sort of upscale. And they had powdered their bodies, and as you can see, they had written on their bodies for their candidate of choice. I think they were paid canvassers. I'm pretty sure they were paid to do this for Falai, who lost the election to Olusegun Obasanjo. This was a campaign rally for Falai in Lagos. The guy got on top of a vehicle and started to give his spiel to encourage people to get out and vote for Falai. And this woman, who claimed to have been over 100 years old, you know, who knows the truth of that? Perhaps she was, but she was casting a ballot. And this picture actually ran on the front page of the New York Times, of her putting her ballot in the ballot box. Now we're entering a section of photographs from Haiti, right after the earthquake there in 2010. Which is like late December. I was actually driving from Princeton. I was on an assignment in Princeton, New Jersey at the university. And it was about a little bit before 5 p.m. So I was hitting rush hour traffic. So I knew I was going to be in traffic for a while as I was trying to drive back to Manhattan. And as I was driving back, I said, hey, let me practice a little bit of my Spanish. So I dialed in WADO Wado radio, which is a Spanish-speaking station here. And I heard them talking about something like, something of an earthquake in Spanish. I can't remember the words they used, but I could tell that they were talking about an earthquake. And this was, they were getting reports from Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic, which is on the same peninsula as Haiti. And they actually felt the tremors in Santo Domingo or in parts of the Dominican Republic. And so I, with my rudimentary Spanish, I called into the office from my car, and I called the foreign desk and I said, look, I'm hearing this over a Spanish radio that there's an earthquake on the peninsula, and they believe it's coming from the section of the peninsula of the country called Haiti. And so the next day I was told that I could prepare and go with a team of people. There was a huge number of us. I think there were about 10 of us who went into Haiti, 4 photographers and about 6 journalists, writers. So we spent a long time in Haiti covering the situation there. And of course, it was tough for everybody, journalists, the people of Haiti, and these are some of the pictures that were taken there. Some people were trying to leave the area. The epicenter was in Port-au-Prince. This is Port-au-Prince. People were catching bus at a bus depot to try to get out. And these are people here who volunteered to help rescue some folks and clearing debris to see if they could find survivors. And some were found and taken to makeshift hospitals. And I think at the time I was there, I'm trying to think of the NGOs that were there, non-governmental organizations. I believe it was Partners in Health had a foothold there already. So they were already on the ground. And I think Mercy Corps was one of the first non-governmental agencies to get there. And then subsequently other United Nations associated relief organizations came in. And these are scenes around Haiti. This is a Sunday service under a blue tarp. And steel bodies hadn't been completely recovered. There were steel bodies that need to be picked up and carried to morgues. And the morgues were really overflowing. I think there were just shy of 1 million people who died in that earthquake. Huge number of people. And they could not make coffins fast enough. As you can see in this picture, coffins on the wooden coffins on the right. People were still being rescued. This man here was being taken out by some volunteers. I think they were from Israel. And then the impact of it on children. We went to an orphanage in a place called Croix de Bouquet. Yeah, Croix de Bouquet, just east of Port-au-Prince, where an organization, I don't know what the acronym stands for, but it was spelled out FRADES. F, R as in Romeo, A as in Alpha, D as in Delta, E as in Echo, S as in sensational. And they were trying to gather together as many orphans and help them It was a local non-governmental organization, a local self-help ground sort of organization to help the children. So I photographed many of the orphans at this place. This is just a few of their pictures. Now you have to bear in mind that the children here were in school. Most of them were in school when the earthquake occurred, because it occurred late in the afternoon. And so they were already separated from their parents. So when they left home that morning, they never saw their parents again, alive. So that's how devastating this was. I just couldn't imagine that kind of trauma. This is a scene in a place called City Soleil, or translated to Sun City, and it was at a police precinct where the government had finally gotten some relief supplies, food, and they were handing out the equivalent of $50 worth of food in bags. And as you can see, the desperation of people who are starving. This was like a week after the earthquake occurred. So people were really desperate to get food provisions. And this poor woman was almost crushed in the crowd, this elderly woman here. She survived. No one lost their life in that crush, which is quite amazing. Now we're moving on to the campaign of Senator Barack Obama. He was a U.S. senatorial representative from the state of Illinois, and he started his campaign in Iowa in the late part of 2007. He kicked off his campaign, and but this was a photograph taken later in the campaign of him with one of America's leading intellectuals named Cornel West. Cornel West, a very important American intellectual who endorsed Senator Obama at a famous landmark location called the Apollo Theater, here where I live. I live in Harlem. He is in Upper Manhattan, and it's been around for, I think it's celebrating its 87th anniversary this year, or something like that. But at any rate, Cornel West, on the stage of the Apollo Theater, endorsed Senator Barack Obama while he was campaigning in New York State. This is in New Hampshire after his victory in Iowa. You can see how enthusiastic the crowd was here with his appearance. I saw that all over the country traveling with him. I traveled with him from Iowa all the way to the inauguration when he won. So I was in, I alternated with another photographer, Damon Winter. We sort of gave each other breaks. He would go in for a couple of weeks, I would go in for a couple of weeks, because it's pretty grueling. You're on a campaign, you could be in Florida at 6 a.m. and you could be in Seattle the same day at noon having lunch. That's how you're zipping through time zones and crossing the country and making a lot of stops along the way. It's pretty grueling. This is also at the Apollo Theater. Senator Obama greeting the crowd. There was a previous picture of a crowd of the audience at the Apollo. This is in Iowa. This is the early part. You can see how young Barack Obama was at the time. He was much younger than he is today, and so was I. This is taken in June. I believe, yeah, this was definitely Minnesota in June when his rival in the Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton, pulled out of the race. So basically, that meant that Barack Obama would represent the Democratic Party in the general election for president. That's Michelle, of course. And this is a stop in Arizona at some fundraising dinner. And this is New Hampshire, where he lost. He lost the New Hampshire primary right after Iowa. And this was on his campaign bus. It's very difficult to get time with the candidate. Everything is very scripted and choreographed. It's extremely difficult to get a moment in which the candidate isn't mindful of your presence. So because I was working for the New York Times, I was able to get some time with one-on-one time with Senator Obama. Also, the Chicago Tribune was able to do that, and some local papers. They tried to spread it around, but that one-on-one time was very limited. I think I only spent 2 days with him, maybe 3 tops. But it's very limited, and it's very, very difficult to cover these campaign races, is because it's so predictable and you're so limited. Access is very limited. I don't know if it's like that in Mexico, but it's very tough. This is just before he made a speech at a high school gymnasium in New Hampshire, in Dartmouth, the Dartmouth area of New Hampshire. And on the bus, he's being briefed by his campaign manager. He had 2. This is David Axelrod. You can barely see him on the right in the photograph. And I was still with the candidate in a one-on-one situation. So there wasn't a cluster of other photographers looking over my shoulders, or I'm looking over their shoulders. It was just me. One of the campaign stops, I can't remember exactly where this was. It might have been in Wisconsin. Okay, so we got another Cornell. Let's see if this is gonna spin. Okay, that was just an extra picture of Cornell I thought I'd eliminated. This is in Arizona. This woman is reacting to the candidate's speech, and she's definitely, by my best estimation, she's a supporter, or was a supporter. And okay, that's twice. Okay, and this was in Philadelphia. Of course, you can see there were sympathetic supporters. And this is a photograph taken in Wisconsin. And this is on the way to the inauguration. A campaign, it was like a whistle stop from Delaware. Did it start in Delaware? Yeah, it was just from Delaware to Washington, D.C., where Mr. Obama picked up his running mate, Joe Biden, who is now the president of the United States. And now we're moving into the second campaign, the second term. This is the victory party in Chicago, back in Brittany, in my hometown, where the enthusiastic supporters at the McCormick Place, a huge convention center on the Lake Michigan, on the eastern shore of the city of Chicago, a huge venue where thousands of people gathered to revel in the victory, the second victory for a second term for President Obama at the time. And you can see how large the crowd was there in McCormick Place where he addressed them. Okay, and I think we move on to maybe one more picture or two more. This is a crowd in Washington, D.C. heading for the Washington Mall, where the inauguration ceremony is traditionally held. You know, a little tongue-tied here. I think I better have some water. I hope I'm not. We're not running out of time. So this is the inauguration. This is the first dance. Now we move on to Nelson Mandela. This is 1994 for the New York Times. This is a group of folks learning how to use the ballot, getting familiar with how a ballot looks and how to handle it. This was in Cape Town. This is 1994. I was in South Africa for 2 months covering the campaign, the first non-racial election. This is a campaign stop for Mandela in the north of Johannesburg. We're at a church, and this is a church auxiliary of women who are taking notes as Nelson Mandela was giving a campaign pitch to vote for him. You can see how seriously they took their obligation as citizens. And this is a photograph of a campaign stop somewhere north of Johannesburg. And this is near Durban, which is in the east toward the Indian Ocean. It's the city the furthest east you can go before you hit the Indian Ocean. And this is in Zulu country. And these were supporters of one of Mr. Mandela's rivals, a fellow named Buthelezi. So this is Buthelezi's supporter. Of course, he lost to Mandela. And this is a campaign rally in Soweto. In Soweto, which is a township just outside of Johannesburg, an apartheid-imposed quarantined area for the indigenous people of this region of the continent. This is a campaign stop near Johannesburg. I'm blanking on the town at the moment. And here's another campaign stop. You can see the anxiety in this woman's face as she lined up among all these folks, all these Afrikaners to vote. She just looked very anxious to me. I wasn't trying to make her feel that way at all. I felt kind of bad that she felt that way, you know, when she saw me taking a picture, or maybe she felt that way before I aimed my camera at her, or before she noticed me. Mr. Mandela did something symbolic. He voted in Zululand, and it's very important for him to do that because he was from a different tribe. And Brittany, can you remind me of the name of the tribe? I think it starts with a K. Do you remember?
I do not off the top of my head, but I can search it very fast.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, he was from the different tribe. He wasn't a Zulu. And, but at any rate, he wanted to let, you know, I guess it's something that a politician would do, is let him know that he would represent all of the people. So he did something very symbolic. He voted in Zululand instead of voted in the a township where he was from, where his tribe was predominant. this area is predominated by the Zulu.
He was from the Thembu tribe.
Thembu. Okay, great. Thank you for that. And this is the inauguration in Pretoria. And by the way, I'm just curious. I see banners across the top of this picture. Do you see those banners? Okay, good. Thank goodness. This was in Pretoria the first week of May. I think it was like May 6th or 7th. And the two men flanking Nelson Mandela. The one on the left in the photo is Thabo Mbeki, and the one on the right is the recently deceased F.W. de Klerk. And F.W. de Klerk was the president of South Africa prior to Nelson Mandela becoming the president, and he was the one that set the stage for the release of the political prisoners. He set the stage for Mandela's release and everybody who was imprisoned with him. Walter Sisulu, Arthur Kadrada, so many others. And Thabo Mbeki's father, Govan Mbeki. Thabo became the second non-racial president or head of state of South Africa. And then it was Jacob Zulu, and today is Cyril Ramaphosa. So, you know, it's a very young democracy there. Very, very young. There's some more pictures of Mandela. Actually, this is the last folder, so we're coming to the end of the photo presentation. This is a photograph that was taken outside of the Pretoria Hospital where Mandela was being treated. He was there, he was hospitalized for several weeks before he was released, and after his release, he didn't live very long. This was taken in July of 2013. President Mandela has passed on, had died before the end of that year, 2013. But this is outside the hospital, and a lot of well-wishers had posted, you know, their sympathies to the president. This is outside his mansion in an area, very plush area in River, I think it's Riverbank, in that area. But that's not the exact name of the neighborhood where he and his wife, Graciela Samora Mandela, Michelle Mandela, I'm sorry, Graciela Michelle Mandela lived their lives. This is another big photograph outside the hospital. Let's see, this is in Alexandra, a township where when Mandela left his home area in the southeast province of the country of South Africa, his first stop was Alexandra because it was cheap to live there. It's kind of a squalid kind of community, to be quite honest with you. I hate to use that term, but this is where he lived as he studied law near Johannesburg. This is contiguous, or it abuts or is connected to Johannesburg, Greater Johannesburg, but it's not a part of Johannesburg. It's called Alexandra. And you can see this is for a celebration of his birthday when he turned 90. He died at 95 years old. This is just something I came across when I was doing a story on where Mandela lived. We were kind of, you know, preparing ourselves for his eventual passing, meaning the team of reporters I was working with. Now this is a birthday celebration in the year in which he passed. This is on the day of his birth, and what was it, July 29th or something like that? But it's in late July when his birthday is celebrated, and it's celebrated around the world. There's the Nelson Mandela Day now, in which the whole world celebrates his birthday. This was at a school in Soweto, where some kids came outside at a certain point and started singing birthday song in their language. And this is actually the one of where I went back in December after he had passed. I think he passed on the 6th of December or something like that, 2013. And these are people climbing a hill to go into the Soweto National Soccer Stadium, to where a big celebration of his life occurred. And these are some scenes from that celebration. Here's Thabo and Becky, who was president at the time, arriving for, was it Jacob Zuma? I may be wrong about that. It might have been Zuma at this point. But here's Thabo and Becky at the stadium, a president. And here's a former President Barack Obama, who had spoken at the celebration of Mandela's life. And now this is people watching the funeral cortege pass by, his body in a limousine being passing them by. And these are people who are lined up. That picture was taken in Pretoria. That's where the funeral took place. This is Pretoria at the president's home. It's like the White House here in the District of Columbia. And people were lined up. I mean, I went there 2 days. The celebration of his life took place over the course of 3 days. And so a lot of people had opportunities to line up and pay their final respects. And here is where his body laid in state in a very ceremonial and dignified way as people pass by, some in tears, to wish him goodbye. That's the end of the slideshow. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing the screen as soon as I can find the cursor. Okay, I think I found it that time. Okay.
I just want to first and foremost thank you so much for this presentation. We've got about 5 minutes left.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. It was a truly compelling presentation. The photos you took were remarkable.
Thank you.
There have been some questions in the chat that I'm happy to ask you if you don't mind staying a few minutes extra.
Well, I have plenty of time, sure. Absolutely.
And those of you who need to leave, totally understood. We'll try to stay about 5, maybe 10 minutes extra, but no more than that. So,
okay.
So I'll ask the first question here in the chat. This is from Hector. He asked, have you carried out any research in Mexico?
No, I've never worked on a story in Mexico, to my disappointment. I visited Mexico, and one of the places in Mexico that I really was keen on seeing was Oaxaca. And that is because I could see the work that Africans who were in bondage at one point, I guess, had done some work on some of that work on wrought iron gates. Some of the more palatial estates, some of the more exquisite architecture in Oaxaca were done by Africans. The ornamentation of the ironworks and things of that sort was done by former African slaves who have been forced into bondage. So that's something I did on my own. I didn't do that for any of the publications that I worked for. I was just curious. So I made a trip to Oaxaca to see that work.
Thank you.
Okay.
Our next question is from Mabel. I'm sorry. Our next question is from Ali. They ask, have you found it that your photographs are best when the subject is mindful of your presence or not? And when or why do you decide to use black and white photography?
Okay, good question. It's always better when they're not mindful, unless it's a pre-arranged portrait. You know, if I'm going to photograph somebody and the intention is to do a portrait of them, then, you know, by definition, they're going to be mindful of it. But if it's a news situation of something that is, you know, moment by moment, a very fluid situation, it's always better when they're not so aware of the camera that they can just be themselves. That's the problem with presidential campaigns. You know, you're not looking to embarrass anybody. You're just looking for a real moment, something that is just authentic. So if the intention, as far as it's best, I'm lucky that I've worked for newspapers that try to do their best to be fair and neutral, and sometimes overly fair and neutral, because then you get, you know, like this kind of, what is it, false equivalency? There's a better term for it, but that I'm blanking on right now. It's a better term. But at any rate, it's always better if it's a fluid situation. Is that the subject is not doing something to to react to the camera, you know, just for vanity's sake or whatever it might be. It might be just vanity, that they're just allowing you to photograph them in a real moment, you know, a real situation. There was another part to that question. That was about black and white. I don't necessarily subscribe to black and white as being the ideal way to make photography, whether it's journalism or art photography. I've been kind of ambivalent about it, but I think as I get older, as I've become older, an old man now, I just, you know, I don't think that black and white is better than color, but I can understand why some people feel that way.
Thank you. So the next question actually was submitted to us ahead of time from Early, and I see that she is on now. Her question was, what image was most impactful to you and why?
I guess I've been very fortunate, and that is, you know, I've covered a lot of big stories. I've been very, very lucky to have had that opportunity. So there have been a lot, but some pictures that stay with me that sometimes just emotionally wrenches my heart are the photographs that I may go back to time and again of the orphans in Haiti. You know, the children that lost their families, the children who are, you know, affected by that. Those are the ones that affect me, I think, the most. They really stick with me.
Yes, those were truly impactful, even just seeing them.
Yeah.
So our next question is from Mabel, and she asks, how do you manage, this actually goes right along with your last answer, how do you manage your emotions when taking a picture, specifically with the difficult or heartbreaking situations, such as the earthquake?
Yeah, I have nightmares. I really, you know, I wake up, my jaw is hurting because I'm gnashing my teeth and stuff like that. You know, I have had, it's been tough, you know, but you know, when you go into this endeavor as a journalist or a photojournalist, you know, it's a choice that one makes, you know, so you have to deal with it. I saw some really terrible things over my course of my career, and I've seen some wonderful things too. I've just seen people treat each other in the, you know, you would think that they were sent straight from some other dimension, you know, maybe there is a heaven, and, you know, angels visit us. Then I've seen people who you think, you know, how in the world were they ever a toddler? How in the world were they ever innocent at one time? Because they've grown into something demonic. So I've seen the worst of humanity and the best, and it's not easy, when you go up against the worst of humanity, and I've seen a lot of that. I don't know if that answers the question. Did I answer that question? I hope so.
Mabel is shaking, is nodding her head, so yes, I think you did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 more questions here. If you have any others, feel free to pop them in. We are going to wrap up at 1:10, so I think we have time for maybe one additional after these 2. The next question is from Art, and the question is, what was one of the most difficult moments that you had to photograph that you could share with us?
Oh gosh. Oh gosh. I guess one of the most difficult. I'm thinking about some of the moments I had in Africa during the drought, and also just try to connect it to some of the pictures that you've already seen. You mean just difficulty, just getting the photograph, or my security and a sense of safety? Did you answer that question? Did you ask the?
So Art, if you can hear us and you'd like to come off mute, you are welcome to do so to clarify your question.
Well, since we're running out of time, and Art, if Art comes off mute before I. There's been a lot of situations which were very difficult. I felt, uncertain of my safety. You haven't seen any pictures from Afghanistan, but there was one point in which, and I didn't take this picture, but I wish I had. I was so shook up by it at the moment. But I was going into a stadium in Kabul, and at that time the Marines and the Army had already had chased the Taliban out of the country, or they were actually initially after Al Qaeda, but then it morphed into something else. So there was some they'd run the Taliban hierarchy up, the elite out of the country. But, there still were elements of Taliban there, and maybe even elements of Al Qaeda. But at any rate, outside the stadium where this pageantry was taking place, where men on horseback were like playing soccer with a lamb. I can't remember what you call that, but it was pretty brutal to the animal. ASPCA would have been appalled, the American Society for Protection of something, creatures or whatever. But actually, so what happened was there was a real press of people trying to get through the gate to get into this pageantry, this sporting pageantry. And I was with a reporter and our security. We actually had to have security, so we had armed security. Unfortunately, sometimes you have to have that. And I got separated. And one of the remnants of the police authority in Kabul, in order to just control the crowd, he pulled out his weapon and he pulled it and he started spraying the ground in front of him with bullets. And this Marine leapt at him and grabbed him and said, "Hey man, chill." And so I'm standing in these bullets, because I was sort of in that circle. These bullets fly around at my feet, and I'm thinking, man, I promised my family I'd get back home alive. And so I didn't take the picture, but I thought, man, if I had taken that picture, that would have been a hell of a photograph. So that was probably the most dangerous situation I can recall. Yeah, that was the most dangerous. Because, I mean, this guy just, he said, "Hey, I'm just going to start, emptying my clip." to control the crowd.
Wow, that is incredible. The stories that you've told today are just so fascinating and again, impactful. So I truly appreciate it. And I know everyone here has also appreciated hearing everything that you've been able to capture in your career. The last question is in fact not a question, it is a comment, but it is from, two comments. The first one is from Veronica, and she basically congratulates you for your work and for the way that you've been able to capture the scenes and the people that you've captured in your film. So we really appreciate that and you sharing that with us today. And the last comment is from our Consul General, and I'll read this in full. Thank you, Mr. Mohammed, for joining us today and giving us the honor of hearing from you firsthand as we view some of your impressive body of work. And she thanks everyone else for accompanying us. So with that, if you would like to say any final words, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, we'll wrap up.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone who attended and who signed up for a Zoom. Thank you, Veronica, for that gracious comment. I feel honored to have had this opportunity to speak to all of you. And as you all know, that journalism is a very difficult occupation, and it can be very dangerous. And sometimes the political currents don't make it any better. So I think it's very important for all of us to be informed and go to all kinds of sources and know what people on the fringe are saying who are opposed to your own views, your own opinions, who are opposed, to know what they're talking about, perhaps, and also try to listen to them to kind of understand where they're coming from and maybe try to improve the situation, because we have to be able, as human beings, we have to be able to live together, to share this planet, and try not to be at odds with each other all the time. And we're right now in a very dangerous point here in the United States. There's so much discord and mistrust among political parties and parts of this citizenry of this country. So I would say to try to listen to each other, but don't if you think something is totally off base or just doesn't make any sense, or it's a complete falsehood or prevarication, you should try to make an argument to convince them that that's just not true. Kind of see your point of view and perhaps try to persuade them to accept the other side and maybe bring all of us back together again. We really need that, because we're living in very difficult times right now. But thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Brittany, for being such a gracious host. And I thank my friend Michael Barrientos for helping to make this happen.
Well, thank you. Thank you again for your time and your words and your photos. They're truly, truly remarkable. And this was a wonderful session. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you also to Michael for introducing us. And we hope that we'll be able to keep in touch and perhaps do another program with you at some point in the future.
Okay.
So, thank you all very much for joining, and we look forward to seeing you at the next event. Take care.
Bye-bye.